Kevin Gordon here from Autosavant.com with your February 23rd edition of the Afternoon Commute.
Company NMLS number 31.
Today, got a couple things to go through. Apologies for not being on yesterday with the old Afternoon Commute. I was working on video editing for some of the upcoming reviews we have, and let me tell you, video editing takes an enormously long time. You know, when you start dealing with files that are over a gig in size, the process just takes forever. The other thing I realized is I have a horrible verbal crutch while speaking on video. The slight pause, you know phrase. So my goal going forward is going to be to cut, you know, out of my video coverage in the future. So what do we have to talk about today? First of all, we took the long-term test EcoBoost Ford F-150 in to get its backup camera replaced. This was because of the fact that there was a technical service bulletin, a TSB, from Ford for owners that were complaining about issues with their backup camera. Ford is acknowledging the fact that there's a problem with them, and they're stating the fact that it's a hardware issue within the camera itself. So they're replacing them. So what's different? Not a ton. The biggest noticeable change when you look at the screen that appears in the rear view mirror of the F-150 is that the grid lines, which used to be reasonably parallel, are now pointed much closer to one another to give, I suppose, the impression of distance and depth. I've yet to test it at night, but as soon as I do, I'll provide more feedback there. The service advisor came out to talk to me after they finished it up, which only took them about 45 minutes, and told me that unfortunately they had to break the emblem off of the back of the F-150, the large, 7 or 8 inch oval, Ford oval that's on there, in order to replace the camera. And that they'd have to order me another one in because in the TSB they failed to mention that it was required. So for any of you out there that may be getting this done, you may want to tell your service advisor to order a new emblem before you go in to get the camera replaced. Otherwise, much like us, and as I tweeted earlier today, you'll be driving around with no emblem. Of course, the first thing I did was ask him, could I have the old broken one? No, it seems they need to send it back to Ford in order to get the new one. So a bit of a bummer there. All of the talk about backup cameras got me thinking a little bit, and it got me thinking about not backup stuff, but blind spot information systems, what a lot of manufacturers abbreviate down to BLISs, blind spot information systems, and how prevalent they're becoming in cars these days. You know what doesn't seem to be becoming prevalent enough, in my opinions, and to quote the great Homer J. Simpson, what grinds my gears a bit? Blind spot mirrors, like we have here in the F-150. Ford seems to be making them pretty prevalent in their line, but not a lot of other people are. And it's such a simple solution to what is a pretty common problem, and it's either the look over and look at your blind spot mirror, realize that there's nobody there and feel free to merge, or without it, the look in the mirror, realize there's nobody pretty far behind you, but you're still not sure if there's somebody in your blind spot, and merge. Manufacturers, of course, are taking the approach of adding an electronic eye that sits there and then alerts you to the fact that there might be somebody there. But the lower tech solution to me seems to work just as well, and costs less, is lighter, and down the road could lead to far less electronic problems. Not really sure why the blind spot information system seems to be winning out over a much simpler, less tech-heavy solution. But if you know why, feel free to let me know in the comments. Next thing I had for the day, and apologies for the jumping around here, but been getting phone calls, which come directly through the old Bluetooth in the car and really don't seem all that great through the video. So, and now there's a guy walking up next to me to light a cigarette. Did you catch that? Okay. The other thing I had for today is to talk about the electronic car manufacturers again. I know. What can I say? They just will not get out of the news. Starting with Fisker, makers of the Karma. Fisker was denied its application for Department of Energy loans, which it had planned on getting and had told its investors it had planned on getting, and so on and so forth. It didn't get them because of the fact that it didn't meet some of the deadlines for manufacturing. And this has analysts saying it's the end for the company. The CEO of Fisker has come out to say, no, that's not the case. We're going to be fine. We're going to make it up in private investments. It's going to be a problem. If I had to pick one of the two to live, I would have to say it's Tesla at this point, because Fisker not getting the loans doesn't only hurt them, it hurts their battery manufacturer, who's primarily dependent on them to survive. And when they lost the loans and they started to cut back on their employees, the battery manufacturer is also starting to tighten up and think that their future is less than bright. Speaking of Tesla, a report came out about an owner and 5 Tesla Roadsters that had bricked, much like you can brick a cell phone if you try to root it and get it to a point where it just doesn't work anymore. It's unresponsive. Well, 5 owners came out to say that they've bricked their Teslas. They drained the batteries to a point that the Tesla was completely unresponsive and would no longer even take any sort of charge. A bunch of different people out there have gone out and done some investigative reporting on this, and it seems like 2 of the cases of the 5 are unfounded in a lot of ways. And the other 3 are cases where somebody took a Tesla, drained it to the point where the battery was unrecoverable. People have written to the people at Tesla, and their response was guarded at best, to say, you know, we give people multiple ways to warn them that this could be happening, and batteries, much like internal combustion engines, need a certain amount of maintenance, giving the example of if you took all the oil out of a combustion engine, it would seize and become bricked, much like the Tesla has. The end result of this is yet to be determined. It's gotten a lot of press because it's an easy story to write, and people, I suppose you could say, much like myself, are sort of looking for them to have issues, I suppose. It's really not the case, at least with me. It comes down to the fact that these are new and innovative things, and the question about their long-term durability is one that's yet to be seen. So it winds up being newsworthy as to whether or not these companies and these technologies are going to make it. Finally, for today, I wanted to talk a little bit about the CEO of Hyundai Motors in the States. John, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce his last name because I know I'm going to murder it. It's K-A-F-C-I-K. Kafkik. Something along those lines. It was an article by the Detroit Free Press that brought it to my attention, and they compared him and his management style to a blend between Ford CEO and Apple's former CEO, Steve Jobs. Right, Ford CEO being Alan Mulally. Sure, I'm murdering that one too, but why not? I'm on a roll. Saying that Ford CEO takes such a data-driven approach to the way that he works, and Apple's CEO took such a hands-on approach to the way he worked. And if you've had the chance to read the Steve Jobs biography, Steve really was absolutely hands-on. He was a micromanager in a lot of ways about his products in a way very few others are. And Ford CEO believes that the data will set you free. It's this concept of competition by analytics, and by getting more and more information, you become more and more competitive. What's the point in all of this? Well, the point is that I've always said a really good CEO can make an enormous difference in a company. A real leader and somebody who's willing to take chances and look at things in a different way can make an enormous difference. And when you look at Hyundai's CEO, I think that's a proven case yet again of somebody who at the top is hands-on, cares about his product, is a product person, is willing to take some chances out there, can make an enormous difference. Then, today it popped up on the Smoking Tire. Matt Farah was at the press launch out on the West Coast for the new Genesis Coupe, as well as the upcoming Azera. And he, with all of the other journalists, had a chance to do a competition on a wet autocross course, which Hyundai's CEO took a run at. And they had a friendly wager, $10 who had the faster time. As it turned out, Matt was able to beat him, but by the time he did so, Hyundai's CEO was no longer there. Well, today in the mail, Matt received a letter, handwritten, with a $10 bill saying, "Good job, Matt. You were able to beat me. Here's your $10, and I look forward to trying to beat you again in the future." Now, it may seem like a little thing, and it may seem like a bit of a gimmick, but that kind of hands-on capability, again, can remind you of somebody like Steve Jobs, who would randomly respond to a fanboy email directly, or some kind of criticism directly. It's that hands-onness and the availability of somebody like a CEO that can make a real difference in how their company underneath them performs. So that's what I had for today's afternoon commute. Stay tuned for video coverage of the Hyundai Veloster, which I was able to finish up all the video editing of, and its written review in the near future. I'm Kevin Gordon from Autosavant.com, and I look forward to talking to you tomorrow.